Welcome to the Bad Diabetic Club. I'm Maddie Cheever, a registered dietitian nutritionist, certified health education specialist, type 1 diabetes educator, and someone who's been living with T1D since middle school. So when I say I get it, I mean that so literally. Along with a textbook, I also understand the 2 a.m. alarms, every unexpected spike, every endo appointment that I left feeling worse than when I walked in. I get it. But today, what I want to cover is two things that I believe matter so much more than anything else I get to say to someone with T1D. So first, it's why you're not at fault. And second, why your blood sugar does what it does. Because you cannot work on the second thing until you actually believe the first one. So that's where we're starting today. Because I want to tell you about my diagnosis. So right after, actually, I was diagnosed with T1D in 8th grade. I was just freshly 14, already awkward, but before then I was a straight A student, loved school, academia was my identity. And then I got sick and I missed so much school and my grades tanked. So the perfect hundreds that I was used to became zeros overnight. And so anyways, one day I'm finally back in school. I have my diagnosis and figuring things out. And one day my principal saw me in the hallway and was like, "Hey, Maddie, are you coming to the straight A pizza party on Friday?" And I had to tell him I hadn't been invited. And he said, "Oh, why?" And I started to cry and he felt terrible. He was like, "Oh my gosh, you don't have to explain." I was like, No, that's okay. I need to learn how to say this." I was gone. I was in the hospital for quite some time. I got diagnosed with diabetes, and that's why my grades tanked because I'm not caught up on all my work yet. And he said, "Come anyway. You are invited." And then I had to say I can't eat pizza anymore or drink soda. And I remember just feeling so specific in that moment about the pizza. It wasn't just the pizza. It was about what the pizza represented. I had to let go of like everything I was used to, normalcy and freedom and being a regular teenager who could show up on a Friday afternoon and eat whatever anyone else was eating without it becoming like a whole thing. And I will say, no one taught me how to dose for pizza. They literally just said, don't eat it. So I didn't for a really long time. I didn't. And in middle school and high school, that can be kind of tough. And so in my opinion, that wasn't a real medical decision. It was a failure of education. And I know so many of us have gone through situations like that where we've been told, oh, don't eat this thing. So, okay, so that's a little bit of my story, but let's talk about what life looks like on the Gluc-Coaster, because if you're listening to this, I think you already know. By the way, the Gluc-Coaster is what I call the blood sugar roller coaster. So it might look something like this. You wake up and your CGM is already doing something that you didn't plan for. So you take your insulin, you eat what you calculated, your body does something completely different than what you expected anyways. You spend the next 2 hours trying to catch up, you correct, you wait, you correct again, then you go low, then you treat with more carbs, then you spike and you're back to where you started or worse. So this cycle, high, correct, crash, correct, spike again, that is what I call the Gluc-Coaster. And it is genuinely exhausting if you've been there. Not because managing blood sugar is impossible, but because like when you don't understand why your blood sugar is doing what it's doing, every single number on that screen starts to feel like a statement. Every spike feels like a failure. Every crash feels like a failure. Every 2 a.m. alarm feels like your body is working against you instead of with you. And then you go to your endo appointment and you've been told to count carbs and you've been doing your best. And then, in that 15 minutes, they say eat less carbs, be more consistent. Or my favorite, not do better. Just do better. Like, okay, super helpful. Thank you so much for that. Not. So here's what I want you to understand. The reason that you don't have the answers is not because you're not smart. It's not because you're not trying. It's not because your body's broken. It is because whatever you got wasn't designed for you. The education, the systems, our body being uncontrolled, we didn't get the language we deserve. We didn't get the education that we need. A 15-minute no appointment is not the education we need. It's a check-in, and a check-in that consistently ends with eat less carbs and no explanation of how. And this is a system that's failing you. You're not failing the system. So Diabetes education, especially in the US, is largely built around or focused on type 2 diabetes. So, hospital based classes and standardized handouts, sliding scales, whatever it may be, almost none of it was designed for the complexity of managing type 1, or at least for the programs that are managing type 1, they're a little bit farther fewer between, harder to find. So, a lot of us have actually been miseducated with type 2 knowledge, but it's incredibly different. And honestly, like the internet is not that much better, right? Reddit threads, if you go through those, they feel like 20 different answers to the same question, and none of them are exactly it or like really answering the question. Facebook groups where someone swears what worked for them will work for you, or you hear the horror stories that they're going through and you are terrified. And maybe it's like you've been trying to solve one of the most complex psychological puzzles of medicine without anyone handing you a map. And then you're wondering why you're lost and not feeling appreciative of the fact your endo tells you to just do better. So every high that you couldn't explain, every crash that came out of nowhere, every meal that wrecked your blood sugar for the next 6 hours, every appointment where you left feeling more confused and more ashamed than when you walked in, that's not evidence that you're a bad diabetic. You're not. What that is evidence of is that you've been trying to navigate a really complex medical condition. There are so many factors that impact blood sugar on any given day. And you've been trying to do all of that without real knowledge, real education that you deserve. Your blood sugar is not random, although sometimes it may feel like that. And it's also not hopeless. It's also not a reflection of your effort or your worth, but it is learnable. And I know this because I've learned it, not from a doctor, not from a class, although I wish I could say those things were true, but I taught myself because no one else was going to do it. And now I want to start showing you the why behind your blood sugar and why it's doing what it's doing. Because once you understand why, you're in charge and everything changes for the better. So, here is a concept that I come back to more than almost anything else because it changes how people think about diabetes management. T1D. Blood sugar has momentum, and insulin has momentum. And most of the time, those two things are not working in sync because no one taught us how to time them. So by the time your CGM shows a spike, blood sugar has already been rising. The number you're looking at is a few minutes behind where you actually are. So if you take insulin the moment you see the spike, you're already behind. Your blood sugar has already had the momentum. It's on its way up. And your insulin's going to take time to work, time that you don't have when you're already at 200 and climbing. That's why the timing of insulin matters so much more than people realize. It's not just about how much insulin you take, and your endo is not just trying to make you feel bad by saying, oh, 15 minutes, 15 minutes. It's about when. And that is something that the 15-minute appointments don't have time to explain. They just say, do your pre-bolus, right? And now, about you, sometimes I still do it, but I used to rate bolus a lot. I'd see a high, I'd be frustrated, I'd take more insulin than I probably should because I wanted it to come down right now. And then I'd spend the rest of the afternoon crashing a low. I'd treat the low, more carbs than I needed because I'm stressed and scared and feeling awful and wanting everything but the kitchen sink. But my blood sugar would rebound. And then by dinner, I was right back where I started, except now I was also physically and emotionally exhausted. And I did that for years without a CGM too. It's not because I was careless, but it's because I didn't get that explanation of what happens and when I correct why certain numbers are the way they are. And I need to know the logic for things to make sense. Insulin timing, it's not a flaw. It's not a personality trait. It's a skill and it's completely learnable. Now, okay, let's talk about breakfast for a sec. Slight segue, but this is one of the most common things I hear. People say, I do everything right and I still spike at breakfast. What's wrong with me? Nothing is wrong with you. Hello. Your body in the morning is genuinely or potentially a little different than your body in the afternoon. That's physiology, not a personal failure or statement. So when you wake up, your body may release a little bit of those stress hormones, cortisol, growth hormone, glucagon, whatever it may be. One of those hormones is giving your liver a signal to release stored glucose in the blood. Maybe it's called Dawn phenomenon. Maybe it's a few other situations that can happen. And it happens to so many of us. For people without T1D, their body just produces more insulin automatically. For us, it doesn't. So before you've eaten a single bite or you only had your black coffee, your blood sugar is already trending in the direction you didn't choose, which is up. And those same morning stress hormones can make your body significantly more resistant to insulin than the rest of the day. So it also feels like you get stuck higher for longer. If you relate, I know that you know this feeling. So let's say you have cereal for dinner and you can, have a great blood sugar, like it works out, but then at 7 a.m., the same cereal sends you to 250 plus with like no resolution for hours. It's not because cereal is evil. It's because your body is different and it's on a different playing field than your body is, like morning versus evening. And so eat less carbs at breakfast is not the answer. It's just a way of not answering the actual question. And then maybe you've also experienced the 2 a.m. spike, the one where you dosed dinner correctly, checked before bed, you were in range, went to sleep, your CGM woke you up at 2 a.m. because you're 215 climbing all of a sudden. It's almost never random. There are specific identifiable reasons why it happens. It could be maybe dawn phenomenon kicking in early, depending on what time it is. Could be your long-acting insulin or basal. It could be a high-fat, high-carb, high-protein dinner that you're still digesting. It could be every single one of those things. And those things are traceable. The 2 a.m. spike is not your body betraying you. It's your body sending you information. Your blood sugar is sending you information. And every bit of that information is something that can make sense when we actually understand and we take the time to explain what we're looking at. Every number on your CGM is data, not a grade, not a verdict, not a statement on you, not evidence of how much you care about your health. A 250 blood sugar is telling you something happened. Something about the timing, the meal, the stress, the sleep. Maybe there's so many other factors, and that's something, whatever those factors are, they're findable. We can find those factors. It's not random. It's not your fault, and it's not permanent. So I want you to understand, I know I gave you a lot of examples, and those can be kind of tough to continue to navigate through, but what we covered today is the why your blood sugar does what it does, why mornings might be higher, why 2 a.m. spikes almost are never random. That understanding is yours today, right now. And hopefully some of these examples make sense. I hope, I always hope no one relates, but I know that some of you will. And so now let's think about the how, the specific strategies for your body, your meals, and your pattern. That is something I want to talk about a little more. But it kind of gets complex. I'm going to be honest with you. Like diabetes is tough, so are we. We can learn a lot of information. It just takes time. So that is why I've created the Bad Diabetic Academy. You're here, the Bad Diabetic Club. Welcome. I love that you're here. But there's also the Bad Diabetic Academy. And that is where you can go from understanding the problem to actually solving it step by step for your real life, not just theoreticals, not just textbook generic information. And the wait list for the Bad Diabetic Academy is open right now. The link is in the show notes, or you can find me anywhere online. Comment the word Academy. I'll send you some details direct. And on the next episode, I'm actually going to tell you what's possible with real people, real results. I'm going to make sure that no one has to figure this out alone the way I did for so many years. I want you to thrive and live your best life on your own terms with great blood sugar. So stick around for the next episode and I'll see you there. That's it for today, my friends, but the fun doesn't stop here. If you liked this episode and want more real talk diabetes support, come hang out with me on social. Just search Type 1 Type Fun, all words, or head to type1typefun.com for tools, tips, freebies, and real-life resources you can actually use. And if this episode made you laugh, learn, or feel a little more seen, feel free to leave a comment, give it a like, share it with someone you love. But until next time, live empowered, be silly, have fun, and eat some carbs.
The information shared on this podcast is for educational and informational purposes only and is not a substitute for professional medical advice, diagnosis, or treatment. Always seek the advice of your physician or qualified health provider with any questions you may have regarding a medical condition. Never disregard professional medical advice or delay in seeking it because of something you heard on this podcast.